Good morning, Senate Agriculture back in action here. We're going to spend some time going through section 10 of our miscellaneous bill. It's the first time that we've had any conversation about it. Just a broad statement about where the committee's been on some of the language that some of the conversations that we've been having is starting to put a focus on protecting prime agricultural soils in the state of Vermont. This language is going to be coming from Representative Burt on a bill that he has proposed, and so it might be a good conversation starter to have within our committee. Again, we have made no decisions about anything other than we are very interested in starting a very broad conversation about what we are going to do as a state to make sure that we will have lands 300 years from now to be able to grow food and to farm in the States. We recognize that the economy of Vermont is an agricultural economy, and that we are going to do our part to make sure that the future generations can do that. So a little bit long-winded, probably got away from what the intent of this bill is, but we do have Representative Burt from the House Agriculture Committee who sponsored this language, and sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Greg Burke, Representative for Cabot Danville, Keachum, and on the House Agriculture Committee. Yeah, thanks for having me in this morning. I introduced H 677, which is a bill that looks like the language from to put in here, miscellaneous ag bill. The main intent is that we see some pretty large scale solar arrays going in right now. There's a little bit of concern about whether or not there's a balanced approach to how that's being done. Making sure that the PUC has all the tools that it should have to be able to do these arrays the right way. If you look at Shaftesbury, which the project down there has received a certificate of public good at this point. It's 100 acres of land that's going to be covered with solar panels. 35 acres of mature forest that are going to have to be removed in order to put in the array. The other 65 acres, to my knowledge, is open farmland. When you factor in removal of 35 acres of mature forest and factor in the amount of energy and carbon that's necessary to produce the panels themselves and the frames, the concrete footers, and the entire construction process, you start to wonder, is this actually doing the intended purpose that we're asking from this system? Are we reducing? How much carbon are we reducing in this process? How much energy are we creating past the amount of energy that it takes to actually construct these arrays? And is it worth it after you consider the fact that for the next 25 years, that land is no longer going to be accessible to the citizens of Vermont to be used for agriculture, building houses, everything you might use the land for otherwise. Our land is a precious resource in this state for farming or housing. And I know we also need clean energy, but I don't think we have a system in place that completely analyzes whether or not these projects are doing their intended purpose. There's no energy audit. There's no carbon audit. There's no taking a look at not being able to crop that land for 25 years. There's nothing about removing mature forest to be factored in. So the Shaftesbury project checked all the boxes for the PUC, and that's why it got a certificate of public good. We're the ones who decide what those boxes are. So that's what this bill is about.
Now, there's a slideshow. Is that support with what you're talking about, or is it something that you want to go through now? Or
Do I have a slideshow?
did you have a slideshow as far as on that? And that was in support of this bill or in opposition to this bill?
In support of the bill.
Okay, and so Representative Burke, is that what your statement is? And that's what you want to talk about today? Is there any more that you want to add to that, before we move on to, the slideshow?
There's plenty more details I could add to it.
The floor is yours, sir. So whatever you want to say.
Yeah, in terms of an energy audit, and the bill has that written into it. And then I believe you pulled that into your language as well. It requires some independent licensed professional do that, and it's cradle to grave. So it's starting where they're manufactured, how much energy goes into the production of the panels. Like how many of you have heard about how much energy goes into the creation of solar? I mean, if the idea is that we're generating a clean energy, then why don't we have numbers on how much energy it takes to actually, what's the energy payback time? How long it takes for that panel to produce the amount of energy it took to create in the first place? And then what form of energy was used to create? When you make solar panels, they're also are made in China, and they're made using energy from coal. Now, there'll be people who dispute that, but most of the panels that I'm aware of in my research require the use of about 1,000 pounds of coal per square meter of solar panel. Okay, so either way, we need to know, to the best of our knowledge, which is using a license, professional independent engineer to tell us how much energy is it actually take? What's the energy payback time on the solar panel in Vermont? I've seen all the panels that I drive by on my way to and from here have been covered in a foot of snow for the last month practically. That's the on the ground reality. So really the bill is about looking at the on the ground reality, because that's the reality that Vermonters live in a situation with solar, and wanting to make sure we're doing it right. And there are a lot of concerns around it.
That we're gaining something from spending all this money putting in, by the time we're done,
Is it in the public good?
isn't it? But
Because right now, the way it's set up is we've been wanting solar in our state with good intentions of reducing the amount of carbon that we're generating in order to have our electricity. Those are all good intentions, but we need to have a framework in place to show, is that actually happening? And we don't have that right now. And that needs to be a part of the process. Right now, let's open up the door as wide as we can to produce these solar arrays without that framework to actually look at, is this doing what we're asking it to do? So if the solar arrays are lined up, they're getting teed up, they're getting built, but are they actually doing what we want them to do? Is it in the public good ultimately? That's really the question at hand that still tries to address some of those concerns. With the decision that the PUC made, there's a letter of concurrence given at the end where one of the members of the PUC addresses these very concerns. So they're real, and they're coming from the PUC itself. So I don't know if I sent that over to you or not. I believe I did. I think I emailed it.
It's on what page? Yeah.
It's the last few pages of the last four decision or concurrence. And as a farmer myself, I want to see our farmland preserved. We need more housing. That's automatically going to take up some farmland. We want clean energy, but at what cost? And we need to make sure we do that right. This bill obviously isn't going to ban constructing solar arrays, but can we do it in a way that preserves our farmland still? And I think there's plenty of opportunity to do that. Our fields are in Vermont, on average size that you're going to be looking at maybe 20 acres is the average size field in Vermont.
that should come to us.
Even if they're a little bigger. Up in Cabot, they're not that big. But when you have projects that cover every bit of ground on farm, then you've taken a good farmed in the process. There's no way around it. But maybe there's pockets of that field that aren't as good or a little bit steeper or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Where you can preserve the best part of that field and have solar at the same time. But when you're looking at when a project is getting to 100-acre scale, there's no way around the problem where you're going to be covering farmland that is our best farmland in the state. But if we scale it down and we look at doing it in such a way that, you know what, if you got 100 acres to work with, that's awesome. 20 acres of it is a better site for solar because we're going to leave the other 80 acres for the farm.
Yes, so
You're now, are you exclusively talking prime farming land? Or are you,
What's primary ag soils, which if you look at the definition of primary ag soils, it's pretty much ag gas. That was a factor because our prime ag you're actually looking at prime ag soil. That's a very small acreage in our state relative to the rest of the soils. Like my farm doesn't come up as prime ag because it's too steep in spots. Maybe it's a little bit, the ground's a little bit more moist, but prime ag is like perfect conditions for cropping. Our state doesn't have a ton of prime ag, but it does have a lot. I can produce beautiful crops on my farm, although it doesn't come up as prime ag. We just had Ari, Agency of Agriculture, and it's the expert on development in ag soils. He works with Ag 250, and he was talking about the numbering system for the soils. They go from 1 to, he talks about 1 through 7. 7 being the least profitable soil essentially for farming, and 1 being the best. So that's all mapped out already through NRCS. We have maps, so it's pretty easy.
we
Pretty
saw the
easy
map
to
earlier. So, for last week.
Yeah.
Last week.
So I mean, my main intent with introducing the bill is to bring a little balance to the situation.
Okay, well, I think we've got through that part of it. We'll go down through the witnesses as they go. You're more than welcome to stay and listen in. And if you got any comments after, we've got people in here from all sides of it. So you're more than welcome to stay and listen in and comment after.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So thank you for representing it. Appreciate it. And we're going to move on now to is it Annette Smith?
It did, got kicked out of the state on Wi-Fi, so I'm a little paranoid. No problem. My name's Annette Smith. I'm Executive Director of Vermonters for a Clean Environment, which is a small grassroots organization founded in 1999 to deal with a $1 billion natural gas pipeline project with close to Rutland and Bennington counties, which most people don't remember, but it was a big deal back then. So I learned an awful lot about energy and natural gas, and my view about grid with solar. I may be the only person in the room today who's milked a cow this morning.
This morning.
This morning, Sumner was ready to go after that.
Since 1987, I served on the board of rural Vermont for many years. I judge solar sites. I would my cow be happy. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the site of the only 20 megawatt solar project built in Vermont, which no longer looks like this because there are no longer cows on it. So what I'm going to do is take you through a lot of information. And I was in the room when Ryan Patch presented about the loss of farmland, so I got to see how quickly one can go in here. And but I'm providing information with links to things so that you can follow up later, because we have been following the renewable energy development in Vermont for many years, and I have created a document that is about 11 pages. And it contains all of the videos and photos and information that we have gathered since 2012, the Electric Generation Siting Commission, the Solar Siting Commission. There was a solar siting task force, so that report is in there. It has one very small section on agriculture. Talks about making the agency a party by right, but pretty much they didn't really deal with agricultural lands. And there's also a link to something I call good solar, bad solar. And that was created for a Vermont Law School class. And it was not my judgment. We went through it with the students and we talked about, is this a good site? Or is this not a good site? The professor said it was very valuable discussion. I'm not aware that that conversation is happening anywhere else. And when you look at it, it says standard offer price 30 cents. Some of these are still getting 30 cents a kilowatt. So this happens to be from 2015, so there's nothing newer in it, but it is a, if you just want to review sort of the history of solar projects in Vermont going up to a certain point, there's a lot in there. So there, if you have nothing else to do on Stasi with problems, we have site visits, we have PUC technical hearings, we have evidentiary hearings, we've got photos of the Ludlow site under construction, videos. So I want to break this down in terms of the size solar projects we're seeing. There's the utility scale, which is generally the less expensive. The standard offer, that program is over, but it had a cap of 2.2 megawatts. And then there are the net meter and 500 kilowatt projects that there were a lot of 500 kilowatt projects, and they were probably the ones that we got contacted about the most. We assist people in participating in regulatory processes, having a say in what goes on in their communities, and in holding corporations accountable. So one of the reasons we did all of that video recording was, what are people saying? So some of the best meetings we heard were very early on, like there was a good public presentation by the developer in Sudbury. And the people asked questions that I've heard now over and over and over again. Why this site? It's absolutely gorgeous agricultural site. Why here? Why doesn't it benefit our community? And I think that's been the biggest surprise for me. Is I expected renewable energy development to be done in a way that was sort of like taking my off-grid system and building it out from a community level. And instead, it's been just helter-skelter where the land's available, where they can enter into lease agreements or contracts. And so it's entirely developer-driven and does not really have a community component. And that was what was so interesting to hear people saying, well, we want to be a part of this. We want solar. That there's no question Vermonters want solar, but they've been very disappointed overall in how it's been done. So I'm going to go through the different types of projects. There are 4 20 megawatt projects that were bid into a Connecticut RFP, and they got contracted with Solar Power and the The first one, the one in Ludlow, got built. It started out being a Ranger Solar project that ran in Maine. Then they sold to NextEra. NextEra is one of the largest renewable energy developers in the country, and also the recipient of some of the most subsidies from the federal government. The other one is Iberdrola, the owner of the developer of the Deerfield Wind project. Brandon was permitted, but it was withdrawn by the company after it got its permit. Randolph was proposed, and there was a community meeting. And the 4th project, I forget where it was up in the Northeast Kingdom. And because of the Shiite grid issue constraints, it never went any further. This is the Ludlow project. And what you're seeing in the upper photo is one part of it that's all on that prime ag soil. And then if you, the lower left there, that was the forest. So they cut 42 acres of forest. They had to do blasting. And so actually some of the areas that don't have solar were statewide and not the prime.
What was on the prime ag soil before it was being exported?
It was, I think at one point it might have been potato fields, but it was hay. It was cows.
It was hay.
Yeah,
So it was a farm.
it was a farm. Yes, it was and that was a picture in the front with the cows.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a couple of pictures of cows that somebody sent me, said this is what it used to look like.
I see.
So the Brandon project, when we went and did a site visit, person who went with me said, boy, this should be a state park. This is gorgeous. It was 3 beautiful hay fields right next to the Otter Creek. And that project did get its permit and then it was withdrawn not very long ago. They gave up their contract to sell to Palisades to Connecticut. And they gave up the CPG. The Randolph one insisted this would be a mile or 2 south of Vermont Technical College. And it consisted of about 40 some acres of forest on the west side of the road. And then this forest or this agricultural land that you can see was in some sort of crop, probably corn. And that was on the east side for the. In general, these sites are chosen because of location in terms of the mix of the grid. The other big companies that we've seen come in is Freepoint Commodities. Freepoint Commodities is out of Connecticut. They have let's say a checkered history. There's some limited information about them further on. They proposed 2 20 megawatt solar projects and 1 50 megawatt project, the Shaftesbury project, which you'll hear from Jesse McDougall about, is on the fields of Vermont Supreme Court that it was permitted. Fairhaven one had absolutely no nobody went to the public hearing except and we went to the site visit, nobody else did. Absolutely gorgeous agricultural lands. The Patton one is there's been activity on the town level, but nothing has been filed in the PUC yet. So both Shaftesbury and Fairhaven still have to go through getting their stormwater permits from ANR, so there's still more permitting to do. They were bid into a Connecticut RFP, but they weren't chosen. So these 2 projects, these 3 projects have had completed their ISO New England action studies, but they have not got a market for the power or the others. But they got their CPGs anyway. This is the Shaftesbury Solar Project. Everything you see in aqua is Ag. It proposes to cut 42 acres of forest, 64 and cover 64 acres of agricultural soils. It is on a sloping north facing hillside. And we did a site visit there that was just extraordinary. It's just it's one of those places you go and field after field after field of gorgeous agricultural lands. And they're planning to cut all the wooded parts, everything you see there, just take it all down. And there is a water line that runs through it too that they're planning to replace.
Question for you that, so who owns this land?
They bought it.
They bought
They
it.
bought it.
Okay, yeah.
So the next era ones appear to be on leased land, and I'm seeing part of the leases. I mean, that's an issue that I see, that these landowners are not protected. They are, there's nobody that oversees these merchant energy leases, and I worry about farmers getting taken advantage of. I've been contacted by some of them, been concerned about that. The Fairhaven project, 100 acres. It's beautiful flat land, half of it's hayfield, half of it looked like it was planted, perhaps in corn, but from the site visit, it looked like it might be planted in soy now. That's the site plan for the project. It involves a stream crossing that's going to need a federal permit, and it got its permit. Nobody's appealing it, and it'll. And the other thing I should mention is the area south of there, they're rebuilding a substation. And so not long ago, a very large solar project, I think 4 or 5 megawatts was proposed there. So once you get the infrastructure put in place for these big projects, they can create the pathway for the bigger projects. This is a site plan for the PAMP project. It's apparently about 300 acres. And I put in the WCAX story. You can watch it, listen to it if you want to hear what the local discussion was about. We are, in a sense, sitting ducks for these types of projects because there are regional RFPs that have gone out, and I got this from the Department of Public Service. This lists 6 of them. The first one, the Connecticut one, I checked on, and none of the big projects were bid in yet. So it looks like they may be bid into these others, but it's very hard to track. I did also look at the ISO New England queue, and the only ones that are in there are the 3.2 commodities projects. So nobody else has gone to get interconnection study for one of these big projects. I think that those studies do take time. Then we have the tier 2 updated renewable energy standard. And so this shows in megawatts the anticipated increase if it had been the old res as opposed to the new res. I testified on this and said, I think that it's irresponsible to do this without talking about siting. We have not had the discussion about siting. I've been saying this for years. Please, can we talk about how to do siting? Because we're letting the developers run the show. And this is a conversation that's long overdue. This is from the Department of Public Services stakeholder group that I was part of. It actually puts some acreage in it. So I just got kicked off the stage. So I'm going to keep talking because you guys have it on your screen.
Yeah.
It was 879.
If you get back, if you can, try to log back on because it's watching from the public.
Yeah.
Like keep talking as you go.
Yeah. So. Whichever scenario you look at, it's looking at something like 2,500 acres, 22,025. And then there's the next slide shows what was shown recently in the.
Going off, your slides going off.
Can't get back on. Okay, I'm trying to.
Just try.
You're also not listed now as a participant, so you're gonna have to.
No, I got kicked off the state house Wi-Fi. This happened before. It should be on now. Okay, I'm gonna try this again. So the change in the definition of single plant may be enabling 2 side-by-side 5 megawatt projects, which means that they don't need to go through the ISO New England interconnection study, and they can build 10 megawatts, which would be roughly half the size of these 20 megawatt projects. So instead of 80 to 100 acres, we're looking at 40 to 50 acres. All right, Linda, you should be able to let me in.
You like a chair? There's one over here. He's only on the end. He's back.
They're back in business. Okay. All right. So then these 5 megawatt projects, and these are the things that we're seeing more, are what we are going to be seeing a lot more. And the Lowell project is a very good example of they upgraded the substation to enable the wind turbines to not be curtailed so much. Now there's capacity substation. It happens to be farmland that's been in agriculture for more than 100 years. It would take about 33 acres of the 44 acres. The town of Lowell was opposed to it. There was no community outreach in advance. Vermont Electric Co-op says they got to meet their res requirements and they're going to need more contracts like this. Now there is another one going on in a gravel pit that they can conduct for. So there are other sites. And so, for instance, Senator Collmore, you're familiar with the Rutland Diamond Run Mall.
For sure.
And it's about to be demolished, and they're about to put up a super Walmart. Right. We have nothing that requires them to put solar panels on those parking lots or on the roof. Well, they obviously could, but unless somebody asks them to. Instead, we have a right next door across the railroad tracks, we have 4.4 megawatts of solar that went on a forested site that would have resulted in a 46 acre clear cut. So, what do we do? why are we have solar projects all around Home Depot and but not on the parking lots.
Rutland High School.
Yeah, I got a picture of that. So in the concurring opinion of Commissioner Cheney, and there's a link to it, so if you don't have it, you can get it there. She said that the Shasberry Solar Project is just for being proposed. She says she recognizes substantial developments necessary. However, it only narrowly complies with the criteria. I actually think that it doesn't comply with the criteria, and they could have turned it down, but they made that decision. So, but this is saying we need better standards. Now, I'm here not just about fields, but forests too. And in her concurring opinion, she talked about the loss of forest and forest conversion. And we do have a chart on that from that was provided in the Shasberry Solar Discovery. And you can see on the left, it gives the acreage in terms of forests to be cut, and on the right, the size of the project in kilowatts. I have not seen anything similar that has this kind of detail for agricultural fields, but I think it should exist. If it doesn't, we need to see the exact projects, the amount, and then it makes it possible to actually go to the map and take a look, for instance, at where is it and where's prime ag soil. So one thing that's interesting is Vermont has prime ag soils, and that's in green on this map that I'm showing. But this is Rutland City, and you find this in certain communities that they're built on prime ag soils.
Yeah.
So a total of how many prime ag soils we have does not tell you how much is available. You take out this built landscape here, there's not a lot of available prime ag. And because I was on the regional planning commission for more than a dozen years, we reviewed a lot of solar projects. Rutland County has a lot of solar projects, and many of them are prime ag, and unnecessarily. There are some that are well sited and are the Rutland landfill by the high school, for instance. But it's the cutting forests for solar. This is from ANR that I put in here. And as a result, in that metering, they placed limits on how much forest you can cut for a net meter project. That has not been done for these larger projects. So that's one of the things we need to talk about. It. How do we assure that we are getting the carbon benefits from the forests and the life cycle analysis?
I think you're gonna, I'm gonna allow you just a couple more minutes
That's
to
fine.
finish up your point.
Yeah.
I think you're making, the points that you wanna make.
I'm gonna get to
I wanna, we got some other.
I don't want to cut into other people.
So,
Yeah.
so is there anything else that
Yeah.
you really like us to know?
There is, all right. This is very important. We heard Representative Byrd talk about 25 years. This is from the Randolph Planning Commission public hearing where former Commissioner of Public Service, Chris Recchia, said, I don't agree this should ever be considered a temporary thing. You guys need to think about this as a permanent impact. And toward that end, I'd never condone the idea of decommissioning fund as well, because I don't think it's ever decommissioned. And I agree with him. These projects are forever. He said you need to think about these like any other type of development, like the housing development. And I assume you're familiar with this part of the statute. Senator Martin McDonald explained to me what this is about. This is something that he was concerned that solar projects, once they were taken out, industry could come in and say it's an industrial site. He wanted to make sure that didn't happen. That's what that's about. I've provided links here to forests and fields, solar siting issues, especially the concern the Agency of Agriculture is just entering into stipulations, as are all the state agencies. And you can read the stipulation. They are just all the state agencies are not even engaging in the PUC process. They come in, they enter into these agreements, and there's not even an opportunity to question. Oregon, Pennsylvania, Ontario have placed restrictions on solar prime ag development. There's a rule in Oregon that's very useful. There's a couple of good pieces from American Farmland Trust and another organization about prioritizing protecting farmland. This is not a unique issue. It's going on all over. These are the elements of the current solar siting process and the proposed paradigm change for solar siting. And there is your Rutland High School with the solar canopy for the parking lot and the rooftop. And we can do this, but we need incentives for the built landscape and disincentives. All the rest of this is the useful information, but I do have specific comments on the bill, and that is to move what is after 10 VSA section 142 up. And the reason is because the upper part says that will not have an undue adverse effect. The lower part says and give due consideration to. We want that to not have an undue adverse effect, not due consideration.
Fair enough. Very compelling testimony, very complete. Committee, I just want to make sure we get everybody in. Any questions for Annette as we move on?
Good answer, Brandy.
Annette, thank you. I'm gonna
And
now
please,
have
please look further at the rest.
Peter, I'm gonna
I
give
recognize
you
this.
some time, some good
It's okay.
time at the end, so.
It's okay.
You know, you as well. So, we have, Greg Cox or, Jesse McDougal, who would like to go first?
Doesn't matter. I'm not on the. I was. Greg Cox, longtime farmer, local food advocate, and started 3 nonprofits. Relevant, trying to relocalize the food system. Know a lot about food. I know a lot about and the land. All the land has value. Ag value, prime ag land, the primary ag land is critical. Land access is critical to young farmers coming into the state. I run a small incubator farm on my farm. I dedicate up 2 acres of my land, and I train farmers. I bring them from all over the United States. And the thing that I'm probably most proud of is not just feeding Rutland folks, but growing farmers. And we now have 5 farmers in Rutland County that have come through our program. We've worked with Vermont Land Trust. They now have their own farms. If you're talking about demographics and the graying of Vermont, each one of these farmers now have a minimum of 2 children. There, I throw my own competition. Every dollar spent on local food generates $2.6 in economic activity. Vermont agriculture has forever been changing, and it changes the landscape. But preserving that and conserving that land for future uses, which we don't know about yet, is absolutely critical. And so seeing people, developers come up here, we've seen it time. It's a cycle that always comes. Folks come from outside, not to live and be part of the community and serve, but to extract. It's part of human nature. Money is the primary drug in this world. You can never get enough, and it will destroy everything around you. You guys are charged with protecting a critical resource, waterways, wetlands, ag land is critical to our future. And so my last nonprofit, Rutland Commons, Google it, it's brand new. We are looking to bring an incubator farm on a larger scale to Rutland County, to train young farmers, to bring people from all over the United States to settle here and we're trying to remake at least Rutland. I'll leave other people to take care of other parts of the state and make it resilient and sustainable. I have solar. I'm pro solar. I have Boardman Hill Farm Solar. Check it out. It received every award possible. It happened in 215. It's 1 acre. There's 42 families that collectively own that. We petitioned the IRS to give us the 30% tax credit, even though it wasn't on their house. It was weedy land. It was some of the worst. I couldn't grow crops on that land. That is good siting. There's good solar and bad solar. Where should solar really be incentivized? Hard ground. routes, parking lots. That was a good point about the Walmart, Super Walmart coming to Rutland. We need to incentivize that, and we need to de-incentivize. So, solar coming onto prime ag land by out-of-state developers that are here for the recs. It's just an accounting thing saying we are producing 100%. No, that's only through paper. We're still importing carbon stuff. We need to be real and transparent about exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it. Do the right thing, the right way, for the right reason. I've competed on one of these solar projects in Rutland on Coal River Road. We had a contract with the hospital. What a great place to grow fresh produce, feeding people that are sick. Nutrition, food is the foundation of human potential. And if you want to deal with healthcare costs, we need to grow our food system. We need to make sure that we get all of those dollars. That land is now under solar. And I agree. Once it's solar, once it has been commodified, it will never go back to ag. We've all seen that in so many different iterations. And people come in, buy, sell the recs, sell the project to a hedge fund somewhere else, walk away. They're not here. We're left here. And land has value. Ag land has value. Forest land has value. You guys are charged with protecting that value for the folks. Yeah, a farmer can get anywhere from $450 to maybe $1,000 per acre. You look in vegetables, and the lowest vegetable per acre is winter squash. That's over $5,000 an acre. But our farmers, as you know, we're strapped, we're economically challenged because we're competing for this land with recs, which are just paper. And we all want Vermont to be green. We need to do it the right way. And so I implore you folks, you know more than me. You're dealing with this legislation. My life is full. I'm trying to do my part. My land is in land trust, transitioning it to my kids, but at the same time, I'm making it available for new farmers. And those new farmers, and Brian, you know many of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you build a better Vermont for the future. Not by selling for temporary gain. What is on these large solar projects? What is Vermont? And what do Vermonters get out of these projects? And I run my farm. Sustainable. It's calories in, calories out. That was some of the testimony that preceded me. What is the value, the inherent value of open land? 15% of Vermont's income or somewhere around there. Tourist dollars. Will they come when most of our farmland is covered by solar arrays? That's like, let's go see the solar arrays. You know?
Yes.
You guys obviously are thinking that, but this is from my heart, somebody that has invested 50 years of my life. I've been on planning commissions, regional and West Rutland, and we sent out questionnaires to everybody in West Rutland. They all want farmlands.
Maybe just got a question.
What's that?
So, Colleen, I'm gonna have to disagree with you as far as, you not knowing as much as us. Well, the one thing that I absolutely do is appreciate your passion. And the other thing I do is in a state that is craving for young people to come, particularly young farmers. I do commend you for having some kind of program to do that. that this committee, we are racking our brains to try and whenever a young farmer is here, we applaud. We can applaud the representative being a young farmer. I'm 61, so
Getting older every day.
but thank you. Just tremendously compelling testimony as far as I'm concerned. I know there has to be a balance in whatever we do.
Every.
And whatever we do. And I think that striking that balance is vitally important, at least to us, within this committee. We see shrinking farms, and people find out that I'm on the agriculture committee. That's the one thing that they bring up. And so, thank you for your testimony.
And I think, Greg, that we've got the just of where you want to be, and I don't think this was going to be the last time that we're going to have conversations about this. So I'm going to ask that we bring up the next witness. And
Thank
I
you.
want to thank you very,
Thanks,
very
Greg.
much. Jesse McDougal.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, though I was hoping I didn't have to follow Mr. Cox. He is a hero of mine.
Yeah.
I wrote out my testimony today because it's an emotional topic for me. I don't normally write this out. I usually can speak more organically, but forgive me. My name is Jesse McDougal. I'm a farmer at Studio Hill in Shaftesbury, Vermont. My kids are the 5th generation of our family to live and work on the farm. I've spent the last 15 years working at the intersection of farm ecology and farm economics. When I came to the farm via marriage, and when I learned I was a grass farmer, I sat down and I Googled what is grass. And when I couldn't figure out how to make money doing it, I sat down and I Googled what is money. And that approach of attacking first principles is what informs my testimony today. That and watching the Shaftesbury Solar Project, which is neighbors my farm, bulldoze my farm, my town, informs my testimony today. I have solar power on my barn. I am all pro renewable energy, but like any, solar is a powerful tool, but like any tool, the outcome it produces depends on how it is used, right? A hammer can build my house and a hammer can smash my thumb. And Vermont solar development, I think, has to be in the hands of the people who love, respect, and need this landscape. So I want to commend you all on your work with S323. It's clear a great deal of work has gone into this, and recognizes that Vermont's working landscapes are vital infrastructure. So in my testimony, I won't take long, but I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the economic pressures I see Vermont's farms are facing, and then a few minutes on the ecological consequences of losing that land. And because I'm a farmer and don't want to fix things 50 times, I like to address root causes. And so I'm going to zoom out and take a look at the systems in which we're working so that we can understand if what we're proposing will be effective or not. So I'm sure everybody in the room knows this, but at the national level, the U.S. is $38 trillion in debt. The cost of servicing that debt is now one of the largest and fastest growing line items in the federal budget, competing with defense and health and human services and Social Security and all that. We have 3 options to deal with that. One is reduce spending and pay it down, which they tried and couldn't do. We can default on the debt, which we won't do. And the third option is print more money and buy our own debt back. So the third option being the only option means that the federal government, independent of party or president, the math is now in charge. They have to print the money, inflate the money supply, which when that hits the economy, people will spend on hard and scarce assets, meaning land, right? So the nominal price of land and farmland is going to go up. And thanks to the current use program that decouples property taxes from land market values. We're protected there. But what's happening now is Vermonters are getting phone calls for their valuable and scarce land from developers, institutional investors, wealthy non-farm buyers, people of no intention of farming the land. And one of those is these solar developers. And for farmers who are already exhausted and undercapitalized and probably approaching retirement, those offers are becoming harder and harder to refuse. And that's what we call the final harvest, is when we sell the land for the payout. At the other end of the economy, that's the top down. From the bottom up, the prices are going up. So input costs are going up, equipment, fuel, feed, insurance, labor. So it's getting harder and harder to make a living on the land, which is not getting more productive necessarily. And as vital infrastructure moves away or closes down, it becomes harder and harder for farmers to make a living in Vermont on the land. And the point of all this is to say Vermont farms are vulnerable, as you know, and will only become more so as printing of money expands. And the result is predictable: more farm closures and more permanent loss of this productive land. And that's why I think Section 10 of 323 is so important, and why it's important to legally protect this farmland as soon as we can, by limiting energy development and storage facilities on prime ag soils and in forests. You can meaningfully slow one of the most powerful current drivers of farmland loss in Vermont. These companies that are getting the subsidies for energy development have no upper limit for what they can offer farmers for their land. And so I want to be clear that I view Section 10 not as a fix, as a standalone fix for this, but a necessary first line of defense inside a much larger food security challenge. Limiting the large-scale energy development will slow one of the most powerful points of conversion of forests and farmlands into industrial lands. And Vermont farmers are operating in a national monetary system that rewards land extraction and speculation and financialization of land, like using land as a savings account, not as for its utility value. So the pressure's on. And then I'll shift to the ecological consequences of this. I could talk for hours about this, but I'll stick with my area of expertise. Soil is not a material like gravel or sand, right? It is a living ecosystem. And you know this, every single teaspoon of healthy soil has more living organisms in it than there are humans on Earth. And when these large solar facilities are approved on agricultural soils, the developers propose, as was proposed here at Shaftesbury Solar's project, that the topsoil is scraped, stockpiled, and later replaced as some sort of preservation scheme. But that's not preservation, that's destruction. I mean, it is just as it's like saying I'm going to bulldoze, stockpile, and then replace the forest. These are different scales of ecosystem, but the function of the ecosystem is utterly destroyed, and you cannot just move it back later as though it's a material that was displaced. You're breaking the cycles and ecosystems in the land. So finally, Vermont farms are not just economic drivers or for necessary for tourism or any of that. They are critical infrastructure for the health, stability, and independence of our communities. We live in a current moment of relative stability where our long and complex supply chains still function, but COVID obviously showed us how quickly that can change. And in March and April 2020, my phone was ringing off the hook for people looking for food. because they couldn't get it out of their grocery stores. And so the capacity to feed ourselves, whether we need it today or not, is not a luxury. It is the foundation of our stability and our peaceful society. And, Greg Cox knows this better than anybody. His work is heroic and it needs to be protected. So I think that Section 10 of this bill is a meaningful step toward protecting that foundation. It won't solve every pressure facing Vermont farmers, but it does address one of the fastest and most permanent ways we're losing productive land right now in giant swaths at a time. So I support the work you're doing and I appreciate it. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jesse. And just preservation of time, I do have some senators that have appointments at noon, and it's not lunch, it's actually meetings. So I'm going to move on. And like I said, it won't be the last time that we have any conversations about this, but we do appreciate your testimony, and I think it was thorough and complete. I want to give the last few minutes to Peter Sterling, Executive Director of Renewable Energy Vermont. And I hope that Mr. Sterling doesn't think that this is an attack on him or whatever. I think we're hearing that there's a lot of people who do believe that solar is viable and renewable energy is as well. But Peter, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me back. For the record, here's Sterling, Renewable Energy Vermont, and I appreciate your kind words. Mr. I do not take any of this personally. I think there's a lot of passion for a lot of good reasons about protecting open spaces and working forest lands and farmlands. And I think people are all coming at this for the exact right reasons. Vermont without working lands would not be Vermont. All right, so let's see. Yeah, okay, so okay, so first, why are we even talking about solar and how is it impacting us, renewable energy? Vermont's investments in long-term renewable energy contracts have insulated ratepayers from large spikes that are covered in the United States. You can see in this chart from our Department of Public Service that Vermont has the lowest electric rates in New England. It's pretty much on pace with inflation, as this statistic shows you. So there are benefits to going solar. We should all talk about where to site it. I get that, but I'm just saying the reason we're even involved in this whole hubbub about renewable energy is because, generally speaking, because Vermont has made, the regulators in Vermont have made the choice to invest in long-term renewable contracts like hydro, nuclear, not that that's renewable, hydro, nuclear, solar, wind, has generally kept Vermont's rates the lowest in the region and insulate us from the big spikes that happen when, let's say, there's a war in Ukraine and natural gas prices spike. One other reason, and I know I mentioned this in my last time I was here, but I do feel compelled just to touch on this for 10 seconds, is when we put renewables up in Vermont, we are not using these natural gas plants that are in other states and oil states. Okay. There's a lot of different stats on this, but I heard earlier about the carbon footprint. What is the carbon footprint from going solar? Here's something I found pretty quick on the internet from the IPCC. And you can see that while there are types of energy that have a smaller carbon footprint than solar, hydro, nuclear, onshore wind, none of those are really available to meet Vermont's growing and New England's growing energy demand. There is no more hydro being built in Vermont or accessible to Vermont. There is no nuclear power coming online in the next decade, realistically, and onshore wind, is pretty much banned in Vermont. And the three types of fuel that we do actually have access to, well, two of them, gas and coal, they obviously have a much bigger life cycle carbon footprint than solar. Okay, so here's a chart that I think is pretty important. So you can see, while we have a lot of prime ag soils, we can discuss how much of it's available and all. I went and I had the time to look at the last 3 years of CPGs that were granted for
solar projects that meet Vermont's, tier 2 renewable energy distributed generation requirement. And it's been about 417 acres are within the limits of the area of disturbance. Okay, so let's say you have a 5 megawatt solar project. That's roughly 25, 30 acres. That's called the area of disturbance. That does not mean that all of the land in that area of disturbance is actually being impacted, meaning the primary impact of a solar array is when you build a road to access it, some concrete pads to house some of the inverters and such, and then of course wherever you're putting the holes into the ground that hold the solar up. So really on most of these, even though 417 acres is within the area of disturbance, the amount of primary soils that are actually being like ripped up or things like that is significantly less. In addition, the Agency of Agriculture and Food Markets has very strict requirements about what you can do on an array on land on site with primary soils. There's weight limits on trucks that can drive over it. There's a lot of things like that. The agency requires people who are putting solar on ag soil. So, but anyway, just as for scale, now I can go back farther into prior to 2023, it just takes a lot of time, but for the last 3 years, 23, 24, 25, there are 417 acres of land that have been disturbed. They're in the area of disturbance for solar generation to meet Vermont's tier 2 requirement. There have been 2 other projects larger than 5 megawatts, which again are not part of Vermont's renewable energy standard requirement, that have been proposed that would have 212 acres within the area of disturbance. Those, I'm happy to talk about those, but what we're doing for Vermonters is to me, the 417 acres does not seem like a number that's out of control.
But I think the argument would be, it doesn't matter what the amount of acreage is that same 419 acres could have been put on land that wasn't primary land. That at the end of the day is the argument. And that I would bring. And that, and in fairness, and I can't disagree with much of what you're saying, Peter. I do agree, again, I don't know the statistics of, I don't want to get between, well, one witness said this and one witness said that, and all this and all that. I mean, we haven't been only in this field for about 45 minutes. So, and other than that, a lot of conversations, but I do believe that, we think that you can do your work, and do it as effectively by not even being at 419 acres.
Yeah.
That's all.
I would encourage you then to have the Department of Public Service and representatives of our utilities come in here, because ultimately the utilities decide, they have the real say about if a project can move. Obviously, the certificate of public good is granted by the public utility. They have the final say. But if a developer said, I want to put a solar array on this piece of land right here, and the utility says, that is not the right spot for us, it won't interconnect, it'll cost you $2 million, it goes away. So utilities also usually are really the first gatekeeper, and you should talk about what the cost of Vermonters would be.
But here's what I want to say. Here's what I want to say about that. I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. That's very disrespectful. I do not want to mean to do that. But we're looking at a farm, largest farm, arguably the largest farm, St. Pierre Farm, that look to capture their methane and their manure. And they were going to power 18,000 homes in Franklin County.
Yeah.
Now, everybody loves that, right? Okay. Why shouldn't they do that? Well, the permit cost for them to do that was $2 million. Why shouldn't you have those same costs? Why shouldn't you have to bear the same costs that everyone else is doing to get renewable energies? And so that's where the fairness is. That's what all this room is going to talk about, is fairness of where you're going to be. So that's going to come into the argument as we go here. Yes, we get it. Stay off our primary lands. You have the opportunity to go and do what everybody else. We realize it's going to cost you more money, but it's costing the rest of the industry more money as well. So why wouldn't you be part of that cost where everybody else is paying the same? I don't expect an answer of that. I just a statement.
Well, I think one of the benefits, I mean, what the Safe Years are doing with those methane digesters, is take, that's.
And that cost is so prohibitively high for them that the company that's doing the project said we'll never come back into Vermont again. But you guys seem to get around all of that stuff a little bit, which is fair. I get it. But let's balance some of that out, because I think that their ability to do something to take the methane out, which we all know that methane's bad for the environment, but they're going to take that methane out. But it's going to cost them $2 million for a permit to do that and power 18,000 homes. I don't know very many solar projects that are going to do that, power 18,000 homes, but it cost them $2 million to do it.
And you're positive, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I'm absolutely
Permit is
positively.
Cost, not the cost of the project.
No, it was $2 million for the permit.
For all the testing.
Just $2 million for the permit.
I don't.
So
think-
that's the argument.
Sure. I don't think anybody would say.
How is that not just like pushing for class?
Defend a process that cost $2 million to help someone who's doing the right thing and providing
Right.
affordable power to them. I don't think anyone would defend that. So. I certainly would. That just openly just raises cost of power to Vermonters, right?
And I think, and we're gonna get low on time, and I promise you the time to
Okay.
do this. We want to be partners with you guys.
Yeah.
We really, really do. I'm gonna ask you to come into this room every time that we do this.
Okay.
Because I want to work this out. I really, really do. I want to work it out to where we can all agree that we can keep the
Yeah.
push for the renewable energies, and we can protect our prime ag lands, and everybody can win.
Great.
And we want to win.
Great. Waiting is fun. So I don't need to read you language in your bill. You'll have it here on the record. This states, there's a lot of unnecessary time, money, uncertainty to the existing public utility process from some of the language in S 323. I would also like to just point to the last line that renewable energy projects would be the only form of development subjected to this requirement in their application process. For that first part right there, and then the second part, the language in red, if you're talking about the way this is worded now, it seems like it reads to me and others, maybe we're all getting this wrong, but it definitely reads to all of us that this would apply to not just prime ag, so it's like any solar array that disturbed 5 acres or more would essentially not be allowed to get a CPG. And so that's a policy decision the legislature can make if they want to end distributed solar of that size. You can discuss that. But again, before you pass a bill with that includes this language as written, I would really encourage you to have the utilities and the public service in comment on this language. Because this would radically increase the cost of what Vermonters pay on their electric bills.
Well,
and things like that.
we will, I promise you,
Okay.
we will not make a knee-jerk reaction. We would never get through this building. Otherwise, we have differences of parties within this building that a couple senators are gonna get their they're gonna get a lot of advocates are gonna come after them.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I want it to be a decision that we have included everyone and everyone's able to talk about it. And we're not out here with a vendetta against anything. We
Okay.
want to make the right decision.
Great. Last slide then, just because Senator Collmore asked me about this last time. About solar panel recycling, I just threw in a couple pictures, things here. As you can see, Senator Collmore, about 90% of solar panel or 90% it's either aluminum or glass. And if there's these, I was just at a conference where these commercial solar panel recycling company, they come in, they take it off site, they pull out the aluminum, they take out the wiring, they sell that, they take the glass, they grind it up, they make it into this pretty colored glass, they resell. So there are things that are, when it's time for a solar panel to be recycled, you can see that, since it's mostly aluminum and glass, we have a good idea what to do when using this glass right now in this country.
And do you have a statistic that when they take the old solar panels down and putting up new ones? Or are they decommissioning?
I don't have a statistic, but my guess would be that most would be repurposed to solar. The landowner, of course, has the choice to do whatever they want. So
Do you think there's any data on that?
You should ask the Department of Public Service. They would be the experts. I can look into that for Vermont, but the Department of Health, that's that. But again, the landowner can make a choice.
Right.
They can decide to put it back into ag and, or they can decide to, you know,
Well, that's one little bone of contention I had with you when you said, it's just that it's like when you watch, and I've gone up Route 40 from to New York to go down to Albany, watching massive solar fields go in. And like I said, the solar field, and then you just have the flat, but there's miles of wiring buried under the ground. There's miles of, so.
and that gets recycled.
Right, and then it has to be pulled out. It just, there's that a little misconception, I think, that's minor impact, but it's.
Well, no, what I was saying was that, and I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, that the the Public Utility Commission CPG process requires a report on something that's within the area of disturbance. The area of disturbance is everything that's fenced in. But what I was saying was not the entire part of that area of disturbance is actually taken up by the solar array. There's a lot of grass that never gets touched. There's roads, there's the racking, and there's some concrete pads for like your inverters. That's what I was saying. I was just saying the whole site of, even though the area of disturbance is a larger number than what's actually like torn up when you drop a solar array. That's all I'm trying to say. Sorry if that wasn't. Thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. I know I don't like standing between people and their food.
No,
It's not cool. It's not cool.
I'm gonna,
No, I know, but
before we go offline and everybody's still here, I think with the committee's permission, we probably have enough to keep on talking about this. Fair enough. Everybody want to talk about this? So on Tuesday, Linda, what do we say we have a schedule for?
Well, hopefully, and then, public utility.
So public utilities, and in the meanwhile, what I want to do is I want to get Ledge Council in here and I want to go actually down through the language of the bill, right straight down from top to bottom. And do we have time before PUC comes in on that? So we'll do that on Tuesday.
10:45.
10:45, yeah. So on Tuesday, we'll dissect this some more and have some more conversation. Anybody's welcome. We're just gonna go down through the language, and then we'll have PUC come in and chat with it. Everybody good with that? Want to thank everybody for coming in. Appreciate it very much. And Linda,